What if someone is watching you right now? If you are about to travel or are currently traveling, especially if you're alone, please scroll on past this video if you get paranoid easily, but this video could save your life. This video is going to be talking about vacationers that have recently found hidden cameras in their Airbnbs and rental properties while they and their families thought they were safely enjoying a peaceful vacation getaway. The stories I'm about to talk about have all happened in the last couple years. It's truly horrifying when you think about the amount of people who go missing or disappear while on vacation. This could be an explanation of why are people being targeted the second they check in. This year, 2026, in Oakhurst, California, a 44-year-old man was actually arrested for doing something insanely hideous and sick. His name was Christian Edwards, and he had this 3-story rental property available on Airbnb. People would come for these big family gatherings and these just nice, peaceful getaways, and police were mortified when they found out that he had more than 4,000 images and videos of people caught in intimate moments, using the bathroom, changing clothes, etc. This was men, women, children, all ages that were caught in these images and videos. And the creepiest part is that police and investigators say when they mostly deal with these cases, it's hidden cameras in the house that are capturing these images, but not this time. These were like home video style pictures and videos because he had actually made secret compartments all throughout this house. And he was actually living on the property unbeknownst to the guests that were staying there. He was in the walls, he was in the ceilings, he was under the floors. He had little pinholes everywhere where he could spy through. He had cracks that were, strategically placed. He had fake vents set up, like air conditioned vent covers set up, so he could watch through those. He knew this place inside and out and would creep around quite literally in the walls. And what creeps me out is like me and my wife and my daughter have stayed at different Airbnbs, and we've even joked around like, did you hear that funny noise? Like, what if somebody's in the walls right now? Or what if somebody's here? We stayed in this one place in Alabama, and there was actually a whole section of the house that was locked off. And we always wondered, was that guy living in there? And maybe he wasn't doing anything nefarious, but you're not supposed to be on the property unless it's a clear divided home, according to Airbnb's rules. So there was, I believe that somebody was in the house that we stayed in Alabama that was on the other side of this locked door because it was too much of the house to be locked off. Like it wasn't just like a room, it was a huge section of the house. When you rent an Airbnb, kind of be mindful of that and kind of trust your gut. If you hear a weird noise, go looking around, go do some investigations. There's some tools that you can buy online that will detect cameras and videos. So those tools are insanely helpful. You can actually see people scanning outlets, smoke detectors, any kind of weird little hole in the wall, and it can actually detect if there is some kind of electronic device in that area. One was a 43-year-old man named Patrick Cias, and if you're noticing a pattern, it's because almost all of these people are middle-aged white men that are caught being these creeps. So Patrick Cias actually had cameras hidden in the plug-in outlets, so like where you plug in your cell phone chargers and everything. He actually had secret cameras in some of those, and they were aimed specifically at toilets, showers, and beds. So he had these cameras strategically placed to catch the biggest chance of you, being unclothed or, getting undressed or getting dressed. And I just couldn't help but wonder, are me or you on the black web somewhere just fulfilling someone's poop fetish? Because that's what these things are for. A lot of times they're not using them for their own sick pleasure. They are, but they're also profiting off of them, selling them on the dark web. So I can't help but wonder if people like me and you are in someone's portfolio right now getting sold across the world to somebody that wanted to see me take a dump. And that has to be one sick individual. Like I can't imagine wanting to see me take a dump with my busted can of biscuits belly when I sit down on the toilet. But that's what these things are essentially being used for when you get down to the root cause of it. And it's truly just sick and disgusting. But the point that I'm trying to make with these videos are these people that have these cameras set up, are they doing more than just getting cameras, set up for images and videos? Are they trying to check out who's alone? Like, is there any single solo women traveling? Is there any really young adults, somebody who's like 18, 19 years old traveling? Like, are they doing this to see who they could possibly take a step further and get into human trafficking? Because they would have all the perfect alibis. Their DNA would be suspected to be found in the house because they own it. They live there part of the year. They clean it. They come there. So that would be an alibi there. They would know the property. It wouldn't be uncommon to see them coming and going on the property. You know, they would have a ton of excuses to be around those places. And you're the one that's in an unknown area traveling alone. Maybe you just got lost or confused, or somebody else kidnapped you in an unfamiliar area. So is that what the main goal of some of these creeps are? Is they're trying to figure out who's easy targets and who's not. Of course, Airbnb has permanently banned both of these individuals from the platform. Like, yeah, I would hope so. But the next one is super creepy, and Airbnb and the individual are actually getting sued over this case. Now, no suspects have been named, but this happened in Scottsdale, Arizona, where a husband and wife and their kids were actually on vacation. And the husband, who is a firefighter, him and his wife were laying in bed, and he was looking at the smoke detector, and he was thinking, this is a weird place for a smoke detector in the bedroom right above the bed. And also, that smoke detector just doesn't look quite right. So in the middle of the night, he gets up, he takes the smoke detector apart, and he finds a camera in there. And not only does he find a camera, he finds an SD card. And on that SD card, they found thousands of images of multiple different people over the past few years. Now, the dates were on the SD card, so he can see that this camera had been up for at least a few years. He turns it over to police and investigators. But here's the problem. Because him and his family were not photographed or videoed, no one knows why they weren't photographed or videoed, but they weren't. They actually could not technically press the charges against the homeowner of this Airbnb because they weren't wronged. So the people that were wronged would have to press the charges. So the police are trying to identify those individuals. To me, this is a very simple cause of how you would identify them. Is like Airbnb has your information of when you booked it. You can cross-reference that with the dates on the SD card. There you go. So I don't know what the delay is here. This has been almost a year now. This has been July. It was July 20th of last year. Why wasn't that guy or woman, whoever owns that Airbnb, why weren't they arrested? And it could be a thing where that property is owned under an incorporation because, unfortunately, tons of these corporations buy up a lot of these properties and then, rent them out to individuals. There's also a chance that the camera was left by another guest that periodically maybe rents the place and comes back to check his camera, because that would also be another pretty smart way to do things. Because the homeowner is obviously going to mostly get the blame, but you're actually the creep and you're just coming back every, maybe you come back once a year, every 6 months or whatever, and you have an excuse of why you're going through there, and you take the smoke detector down and get your SD card out that nobody knows about, and that's your little kick. So no one knows why they have been not charged anybody, but the guy who found the camera is, like I said, civilly suing the property owner, and he's civilly suing Airbnb as well. Now, Airbnb has temporarily suspended that host, even though they're still unnamed. That's Airbnb's official statement, and the investigation is still apparently ongoing. Now, what makes this even worse is when you couple them with port cities or beach towns. Port cities and beach towns have a huge spiked increased rate of people going missing anyhow, especially people that are not from those areas. We're talking hot spots like Miami, New York, LA, Houston, Texas. Those hot spots like port cities, because people can get kidnapped and trafficked really easily. A lot of times before anyone even knows you're missing, they could already have you kidnapped on a boat in international waters before anybody has even reported you missing 24 hours later. So these port cities, coupled with these Airbnb and rental properties with these hidden cameras, would be a perfect ruse for somebody to figure out who's traveling alone. Now, I'm going to talk about some cases here in a minute of this exact situation, but FBI's profilers really say that this is what they think happens in these beach towns, and this is why. And I'm only telling you all this because the perpetrators already know the information I'm about to tell you. I'm telling you this so you're better prepared and so you know not to put yourselves in these positions. Beaches are almost completely unsurveillanced. There is almost no cameras on beaches. And what I mean by that is most beachfront property, like if you go to Miami, you go to LA, most beachfront property is owned by hotels. Well, they have cameras on the hotel property, and they can see the first little glimpse of the beach. But when it gets dark outside, the beaches are pitch dark. Anybody who's walked the beach knows it's pitch dark. So the cameras really can't see out there in the darkness, especially like right where the water meets the sand. And there's essentially no police officers very rarely going up and down that area. They'll just comb it every once in a while. So FBI profilers believe that people stalk these areas looking for people who are drunk or vulnerable, or by themselves, or even in very, very small groups that they think they can overpower. So don't put yourself in these positions when you're in these dark blackout areas, away from surveillance, away from police, when you've had a little too much to drink and you're kind of staggering around in an area you're not that familiar with anyhow, because these creeps and these weirdos are already there. People in the comments always say, you're giving them ideas. I promise you, they already know. You just didn't think of this because you're not a weirdo. But the weirdos that are watching this video, they already know this information. It's very easy to find, especially if you're wanting to go through with it. So please just say, watch out for those dark areas. Know your surroundings. Try not to go alone. But unfortunately, in this first case I want to talk about, it didn't matter that they were alone or not, because 3 young women were all taken at the same time. So this actually happened in the Indiana dunes of Lake Michigan. You can look this case up. It is an older one, but it is one of the most chilling ones. 3 young women were on the dunes, which, if you guys haven't been to Lake Michigan, it's like the ocean. You can't see the other side of it. It is huge. They're walking the beach. Only one witness says that, hey, we saw them actually talking to a guy that was on a boat, and he was just a little bit out on the water, and we saw them kind of conversing back and forth with him. And then shortly after that was the last that anybody ever saw those 3 young women. And there's a bunch of theories, because their belongings were all found left in the sand about where that witness last saw them. So there is a theory that they didn't want to get their belongings wet. The guy was offering to take them on a quick boat ride. So, hey, leave your belongings, here on the beach, like your purse, your shoes. And this is what I don't find believable, is who would leave their wallet behind and come get in the boat and I'll drive you around. Now, the reason why they would have done this is because if he was out in the water, they would have probably had to wade out there in the water, at least somewhat. So they didn't want to get their belongings wet. I'm not really buying that, but that's what investigators specifically think happened. The other theory is that the witness was actually the person who did something to them, and they were just saying that, hey, we saw them talking to a guy on a boat, as a way to, throw suspicion on a third party that may or may not even really exist. And the last theory is that maybe they all went swimming, maybe they all had a little bit to drink, and they got stuck in a riptide. The problem with that is their bodies have never been found. Their articles of clothing have never been found. The only thing that was ever found was their belongings they left in the sand on the beach, all right next to each other. That case has gone unsolved and unresolved for decades, with no new leads ever. And I could go on and on and on cases that have happened recently, like in the last few years, of people that have gone missing while visiting beaches with their families or friends. And they're almost all women. Okay. So I would say that you could say that a lot of these were probably drownings or shark attacks, etc. But when you look at how many of them are women, that's where I think it's pretty odd. It'd be one thing when I was reading these cases off, when I typed in the search engine of like cases that fit these categories, and I put in like categories of strange disappearances, with vacationing with family and all this stuff. You would think that if it was drowning, you would see a pretty even split, but you don't. It's like 90% women. So Panama City Beach, Nancy Mither, she's 66-year-old, retired school teacher from Kentucky. Her and her husband are going to Panama City Beach in Florida, which is in the Gulf, and they're all having fun. And the husband and wife, they're sitting out there watching the sunset, but the husband had a really bad sunburn, and I've been there. I've had sunburns that have made me sick before, and he was talking about how he'd had a really bad sunburn. He was feeling sick from it. He had a blinding headache. He just wanted to go back to the room and kind of relax. And she said, well, honey, you go ahead. I want to watch the sunset. And he said, okay. He went to the room and immediately fell asleep, which a lot of you all might not understand that. Me being extremely fair-skinned, I get really bad sunburns that, like, it doesn't matter how much sunscreen I put on. It will make me sick to my stomach. It will give me these blinding headaches that make me want to puke. And then all I want to do is go to sleep. Like, that is a real thing. Sun sickness is a real thing that some very, very, pale-skinned people deal with. And he was essentially in that situation. So he went back to the room. He fell asleep, took a nap for a couple hours. And when he woke up, he realized that his wife had not came back. Now, hotel surveillance does confirm this, that you can see them go on the beach together. The beach in Panama City Beach is extremely busy. So if he'd tried to drown her in the water or something, people would have saw, like, there's people everywhere. And the surveillance video sees him come back on his own. And the story is furthermore backed up by the fact that, one, he had an obvious sunburn, but two, other people that were at the beach actually caught her in the background of their photos by herself after the time he'd reported going back to the room, and the surveillance camera catched them going back to the room. So the story is corroborated by him, because a lot of people want to point fingers at the husband here. And Nancy was seen partly in the water. The beach is very busy, and that's the last we know of her, is a photograph. She's actually in the background of a photograph, partly in the water, and that's the last we ever see of Nancy. Her body and clothing were never found. Her belongings were still sitting there on the beach, and that's all we have ever seen of her. Now, there's tons of theories because the Gulf is pretty riddled with sharks. And, you know, I'm a big shark advocate. I don't want anybody to go out hunting sharks. The Gulf is full of sharks. I have been there in the Gulf. I've seen the sharks myself. There's a bunch of them. Anyhow, some people say that maybe she was shark attacked. If that's the case, you almost always find some part of the body if it was that close to the shore. 2, most people would have seen the shark attack probably happen since that beach was very populated. The next theory is that she drowned. She got stuck in a rip current, or maybe she was drinking a little bit. You know, she's an older lady. Maybe she drowned. Once again, it was a pretty busy beach. I feel like people should have saw her. She would have probably been screaming. Who knows? Maybe she stayed out there a little bit after dark and no one saw her. Maybe people had left. Maybe it was a shark attack a little bit after dark, because that is the prime time for sharking, is like right at sundown. So who knows? Either way, these cases are like, you can just look them up and it's just bam, 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 one after another, one after another, one after another. And if it was the latter of a shark attack or a drowning, you would think we'd see more men in the mix, but there's very few men that go missing. And that brings us to our last case. So the last case is Tyler from North Carolina. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head, but his boat was found abandoned. It was just right off the shore. He was apparently like inland coast fishing, and his boat was found right on the shore. No one can figure out what happened to Tyler. He completely vanished. He's gone. They can't find his body. And some people say maybe it was a boating accident where he fell off the boat. He was a pretty strong swimmer, and those waters were not known to be choppy. But once again, shark attacks can happen. And the boat was drifting. It was not like a full throttle where maybe he fell off and it was like stuck in full throttle or something and the boat left him. It would have been slowly drifting. So even if he would have fallen off, he should have been able to get back in pretty easy. There's a ton of theories out there, but something that does happen time to time is people that go out on these little boats do get targeted by these people that are in their own little boat, because there's essentially no way to prevent crime from happening out on the water. I mean, when you're out on a boat in the ocean, whatever happens out there is between you and God, because nobody can get to you quick enough to help. Keep that in mind. There's a reason why you watch things like Dexter and stuff, and they take the business out there on the boats, because there's no surveillance out there. And there's very little that anybody can do or even wants to do out there when you're on your own. Hope you enjoyed tonight's video, and I hope you all safe travels. I don't want to scare anybody or fearmonger. I am simply trying to raise awareness to what can be around you, because so many people are ignorant to these situations and the dangers that can entail, you know, solo traveling or traveling in small groups. You're not invincible. You're not untouchable. You hear about it happening on TV, but it can very well happen to you as well. Like it's not just some fairy tales that are out there. I don't tell these stories to fearmonger. I tell these stories to hopefully raise awareness, because if you look at the missing people cases that go unsolved, every year the number is slightly growing. And until people are aware of their surroundings and like do more to protect themselves or to be aware of the situations they're in, it's only going to keep going up. And you think these numbers would go down with the amount of technology that we have, but it's not. If you would like to follow for more true crime stories, conspiracy theories, weird alien stuff, what have you, follow the podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Nomads Animal Reserve on YouTube.